Hello, it's James back with Isolation Inspiration. I'm very excited to be talking about one of my favourite subjects today, but I'm going to start. We do three things every day, if you remember. I'm going to start with something about the Peel family. The Peel family built Hampton Manor in 1855. That's a date that should be firmly stamped into your mind, 1855. But they didn't, Frederick Peel didn't just build Hampton Manor, he built the cottage at the same time. And an interesting fact that I want you to open your eyes to is if you go and look carefully at the wall garden is built around the cottage. But the wall garden was not there in 1855. It wasn't built until 1891. So it was actually something that was done retrospectively. They built around the cottage and used the cottage as part of the wall. Of course, the walls are there to protect the produce from the elements, to create some shelter, and most importantly, to keep the animals and the rabbits and the foxes out from devouring all the good things that we're growing. So take a look next time you're down and absorb some of the history of how the wall garden emerged. The next thing I want to tell you today is a tiny bit about our family story. So a bit about Derek today. Derek cut his teeth at Rolls-Royce, where he was a trainee. At one point, he trained to be a pilot, forced into it by mum, apparently, but finally ended up making his career in laying pipelines all around the world. So if you want to blame anyone for the carbon footprint, blame Dad. He was the one that was all over the Middle East laying pipelines that allowed the oil to flow freely around the world. And he laid pipelines down from Scotland, pipelines in Ireland. If you want to know about a pipeline anywhere in the world, ask Dad. I'm sure he will know. He had a fascinating career. It was exciting, dynamic, massive projects, huge challenges to get these pipelines across some very controversial parts of the world. So he's full of stories and he's met some fascinating people on his travels. So why don't you ask him a thing or two about where he got up, what he got up to, and where he was during his career. Finally, I wanted to very briefly talk to you about one of my favourite subjects, which I could talk about to you for a very long time, but I'm going to keep it as short as I can. Orange wine. Orange wine is something that is new to many people. In fact, there's not a lot of orange wine in the world. Orange wine is very popular in Georgia. Georgia, for those of you who don't know, is actually known as the birthplace of wine. So it's right back to I think it's about 5000 BC, the first reference of wine being made, and it was in Georgia. And Georgia today is making some fantastic wines where, no chemicals, completely natural. They're an agrarian society. It's very traditional, and they produce a lot of their wines in amphoras and in traditional ways that really respect the fruit, respect their land, and it's a great place to explore wine. And so if you get a chance to drink some Georgian wine, do it. You'll find on our wine list Pheasant's Tears. But what is orange wine? Well, orange wine is actually the way they would have made wine very much from the beginning. They would never have discarded the skins and the pips at the beginning when they were first making wine. But over time, wine became more refined, and they discarded skins and pips, and they just made the wine from the flesh, and they fermented the flesh, and they produce much more pale, refined, delicate wines, and that became the goal. That became the goal in life. But something shifted again, and there's been a change. And many of the natural winemakers have realised that in discarding those elements, they're actually discarding a key ingredient in being able to produce a wine that is true to its place, because those skins are very much an ingredient available to them to use to shape the wine, and the skins will do something different from the flesh. The pips, the stems, all of those elements will be able to shape the wine some way. So it's really, really important that we realize that natural winemakers have chosen to limit themselves. They don't want to import yeasts that have been commercially made to make it more controllable in the way they produce their wines. They don't want to bring additives in to add to their wines, to manipulate flavors or balance out certain imbalances within the wine. They are very much committed to producing wines that only use what is available to them within their vineyard, and that is it's a philosophical commitment. It's a desire to produce something that is true to its place, and I just really encourage you to reflect on that. It's a really, for me, that level of localism is something I really respect, and I find it fascinating. And I think it's pioneering and championing a way of life and a way of producing wine that is the future. So natural winemakers have actually really become fascinated again by making orange wine, because they don't, they want to have as many tools in their box as possible to shape their wine. So if they could add some skin contact, if they could use the stems, if they could do different things to bring in structure or tannin or a little bit of color, it will make the wine interesting. And for those of you that have dined out a lot and drunk lots of wine flights, you'll know that very often wine flights are very, very, very much white wine led. Occasionally you might get a red at the main course, but very often lots of white wines, maybe a rosé here or there. But the reason is red wines can be very, very heavy, and the orange wine movement's brought something more interesting to the table for wine flights too, because very often they're very food friendly, they're very interesting, they work really well. They've got something more than a white wine. They're more grippy, they've got more tannins, sometimes more interest, some different complexities within them that make food pairing really interesting. So look out for orange wines, experiment with them. For those of you that don't know, we always work our wine list into two sections: comfort and adventure. Comfort is like, if you want Merlot, we're going to give you Merlot and it's going to taste of Merlot. But if you want to go off the beaten track and you want to do something different, that's adventure. And we'll take you places you may or may not have been before, and we'll show you and share with you things that you've not tasted or tried before. So our wine list is comfort. For those, give them what they want. If people come and they know what they want and they don't want to be messed about with, we give them what they want. But if they want to be led by us and they want to go off the beaten track and go on an adventure, we love to take them places they may never have heard of, places like Georgia, places like Slovenia, places like Hungary, some amazing wines coming out of Hungary, some of the parts of France, or grape varieties, indigenous grape varieties that people may not have drunk before, surprising them with varieties that they may know but actually can show up completely differently when they're handled sensitively and respectfully. We actually do a Sauvignon Blanc tasting that shows just how varied Sauvignon Blanc can be. Sauvignon Blanc can be that very tropical gooseberry, very expressive fruit, but there's actually some really restrained expressions, some expressions that I really enjoy drinking. So it's really it's really worth opening your mind and exploring, and that's the purpose of our wine list, to help you do that. Thank you very much for today.